Hi everyone, how are you? Hope you're doing really well. Welcome back to my channel. If you haven't met, hi, you can call me Tanan, and this is my channel. And today I had planned another video, but at last minute I decided to declutter some palettes, so I want to share that with you. I wasn't expecting this at all, to be honest. I have a lot of palettes. If you saw my eyeshadow palette collection video, you know that I have around more than 40 palettes, and before yesterday I had 50 palettes in my collection, and there was also another palette on the way, so that's a total of 51 palettes. And there are some palettes that I've been thinking in decluttering for a while now, but I wasn't sure. I didn't want to get rid of them, to be honest. So yeah, I want to share with you which palettes are those, what I'm going to be decluttering. Whew, I have never ever have done a huge declutter on my collection, not on my channel, not on my Instagram. Usually when I declutter palettes, usually are one or two, maybe at most three palettes, and now we're getting rid of a couple of palettes more than I'm used to. So yeah, let's try not to make this video too long, and let's start with the palettes that I'm decluttering. And just as a spoiler, I'm decluttering like 127 pans of eyeshadows. So yeah, maybe if you're used to those huge declutters where people get rid of half of their collection or a quarter of their collection, no, this is not that at all. But I'm getting rid of of a good number of palettes for myself at least. Let's start with the first palette, and if you saw my Pandos eyeshadows video, you know that I said that I was going to declutter this palette. I was waiting for a big magnetic palette to depot all of the shadows that I wanted to keep, and I thought that I wanted to keep a lot of them. But well, it's this palette. This is the C'est La Vie palette from Bold Cosmetics. It was an impulse purchase last year for my birthday, and it's a huge palette. It has 30 shades, and I thought that I wanted to keep most of the shades, but suddenly I realized that was not the case. First, I was never a fan of this color story. Now you can look at it with the potted shades. I cannot put it in another angle because this shade is broken. I was never a big fan of this color story, and I wanted to declutter it, get rid of it, but at the same time it has some really nice colors that I didn't want to get rid of it. That's why I decided that the best thing for me it was to depot it. And here I have all the shades that I decided to keep, and I end up keeping 11 eyeshadows. These 8 at the bottom are the ones that I wanted the most, but these are some really neutral, really common shades, but that I really like. So I kind of feel bad to deposit an eyeshadow instead of giving the whole thing away, especially because it was a newer palette. But I wasn't able to get rid of the palette for 8 shades. So I think it was a good decisions, and I'm happy with that. Next we have my Enchanted palette from W7. I'm getting rid of a lot of W7's palettes. I think I have like maybe 6, and now I'm going to keep 2, I think. So that's good for me at least. This palette, most of the palettes I'm getting rid of are palettes that I haven't used in a long time, so I don't see the point of keeping them when I have such a huge collection. But this palette is the one that I have used the most. It's a palette that, to be honest, I enjoy it, but not enough. I don't use it enough, so I don't know, I don't want to keep it. It has some really nice shades, but are things that I already have on my collection. So usually I use this palette just to use it, just to feel good about myself that I'm using my collection, but it's not something that I really want to use. Like, it doesn't inspire me lately. This palette is going to my sister she really liked the color story, so I'm happy that she's going to use it. But it has these shades that are really pretty, especially these three that are kind of toppers that are really pretty, but they work the best with a glitter glue, so I might have to give her a glitter glue so she can get good use out of this palette. I don't know. It's hard for me to get rid of my palettes, but I know it's for the best. Then we have another W7 palette, and it's my Delicious palette. And I think in its lifetime, I have used it twice, maybe. It was kind of hard for me to get rid of this palette because it's a dupe from ABH. But I haven't used it, and I have had it for like 2 years now, and I have used it twice. No kidding. So yeah, I think this is a good decision, but I haven't found yet someone that wants to keep this palette, but this is getting out of my collection. Okay, the next one is the one that hurts me the most. I'm not sure why. No, I know why I'm doing this, but it hurts me to give away this palette. It's my Being in Love with from Obsession, and it has a really pretty color story, but there's nothing special in this color story. I have these colors like a trillion times on my collection. The reason why it hurts me so much to give away this palette, it's because this was my first palette that I got 2 years ago. I was in Scotland on my exchange studies, I guess I can call it. I wasn't really into makeup. I had one palette full of rounds and I was at Boots and I saw that this palette was like £4 or something like that, and I decided to buy it and see if I like it, and I really really like it. And I decided that I want some more palettes, and I bought a lot of W7 palettes and Revolution palettes, and then I got back to my country and I kept until this day I'm keep buying palettes. So this was the first one, was the responsible. So oh, it hurts me a little bit, but I think since 2019 I have used it like 3 times, so it's not worth it for me to keep it. And my mom is going to keep this one, so at least it's going to stay close. So this is like the fourth palette I'm getting rid of. Okay, the next palette may be the only one that is going to end up in the trash, and that is my Life's a Peach from, again, W7. I was thinking that I wanted to find a new home for this palette. I offered this palette to my mom and my sister, but while I was offering this palette, I realized that the quality of this palette is really bad. So I don't want to give this palette to someone and they end up being disappointed with the quality. I'm not a big fan of like sending to the trash this palette, but most of the palettes that I'm giving away are because I'm not using enough, because I don't like the color story or something like that. In this case, this is a pretty boring color story to begin with, but that's not the issue with this palette. The issue with it is that the formulation is really poor. You can see that these shades just, I don't know, they're so hardly pressed that you don't get any pigment. Even the mattes are getting hard pan. I have no idea why. So this is not a good palette. For that reason, I think this is going to the trash. The next palette is one that also is really hard for me to get rid of because I used to love this palette so much. It was my everyday palette. I used to wear these shades to go to the university every day, to go to my classes. I even think that this is the palette that I used at my first date with my boyfriend, and we've been dating now for almost 2 years. And it's my chocolate orange from I Heart Revolution. And as I said, I used to wear these colors almost every day. I remember that my favorite shades were this one, this, and this. I use them almost every day. It's such a good palette for an everyday look with some pops of orange. I just love this palette so much. But for different reasons, I haven't gone to the uni, like to the campus, in almost 2 years now. I don't know, this palette was so loved at its moment, but now I have better stuff now. This won't be my daily palette anymore, so it's a really nice palette and I haven't used it and I don't think I'm going to use it as much anymore, so I'll just give it away. And I thought that this one was going to be the last palette that I was going to declutter, but no. The last palette that yesterday I decided that I wanted to give away was this palette. And again, this one is another one that hurts me a little bit because I love the color story. This one is Frida from Beauty Creation. It's a beautiful palette. Just look at it. It's really, really pretty. I bought it at the end of 2019, I think. At that time, I didn't have a lot of palettes, so this one was really special and it was my first big palette. This palette, I've been thinking so much if I wanted to give it away, and I was saying no because I really like the color story, but I haven't used it in the last year. So what's the point of keeping a palette that you're not using? As I said, I have a lot of makeup, a lot. So there are a lot of palettes that I use once a month, once every 2 months, once every 3 months, but I'm using and I'm remembering those palettes and want to use them at some point. But this palette, I just don't use it, and even if it's a beautiful palette, I don't feel inspired to use this palette. Maybe because it's a huge palette, it has like 30, I think, no, 35 eyeshadows, and lately I don't want to use such big palettes. So yeah, I decided that it is the time to say goodbye to this palette. Again, this is one that my sister is going to keep and I think she's really going to enjoy it. So those were all the palettes that I was thinking to declutter. But then this morning I was thinking of doing this video and I thought maybe in 6 months I might do another declutter, like reevaluate my collection and see if there are something else that I want to get rid of. And this palette immediately came to my mind, like something that I want to declutter at some point. And I said, why I just don't declutter it right now? That is new, that it's going to be easier for someone to want it. Maybe I can even sell it because I have used it like 3 times or something like that. I just don't enjoy this palette. And I'm trying to think about the projects that I'm doing, like the Pandos eyeshadows, the using my eyeshadow palettes collection, and thinking to keep only things that if I roll this palette into those projects, I'll be happy to use them. And this is not a palette I'll be happy to use in any of my projects because it's not a color story that I enjoy and it's not even unique at my collection. And that is my Huda Beauty Ruby obsessions. Yes, I'm decluttering one of my high-end palettes. I cannot believe it. I was really happy when I got this palette. I got it at my only BoxyCharm and I was so happy to get a Huda Beauty palette. I wanted the purple one, but I got the red one and I was happy anyway because it was my first high-end palette. But now I think about it and I just don't enjoy reds. And I have a red palette. I have the Main Squeeze palette from Colourpop and that is also a monochromatic red palette. And I think I have enough with one monochromatic red palette. And between this one and my Colourpop one, I prefer 100% the Colourpop one. For example, this cream shade, I have it a million times. This shade is not good. I don't like it. And also have one of these shades that are kind of a shimmer with a black base and I don't enjoy that kind of shades. Let me No, I don't enjoy those colors. Even if the whole color story is not something that I enjoyed, it also have three shades that I know I won't use. So for that reason, I'm saying goodbye to this palette. So yeah, I'm decluttering 8 palettes in my collection. So now I have, I think 42. Yeah, it should be 42 palettes on my collection. And also I feel more comfortable with that number because I feel like my roof of the amount of palettes that I want to have is 50. But even that number is too high. I would like to end up having around 40 palettes. I don't know if that's possible for me. But yeah, that's everything for today. I think this video was a little bit longer than I was expecting, but I hope you enjoyed it. If you like it, please consider subscribing and give it a thumbs up. That really helps me. And I hope I'll see you in the next one. Bye!